One. All right, here we are, another live stream talking about family life, and man, hopefully the kids are getting tucked in. And I don't know if it's good to talk about family life at the end of the day. Everybody's all worn out, but got my dad here joining me, Dr. Scott Turansky of the National Center for Biblical Parenting. My name is Josh Turansky. I'm the pastor of Haven City Church. I'm in Southeast Baltimore. Dad, where are you at?
I'm in New Jersey and in Lawrenceville, so I'm just hunkered down in our home and using it as a studio for broadcasting. I got people calling me with all kinds of challenges with the National Center for Biblical Parenting. Lady called me today and she says, my 1-year-old's learning how to walk and I don't have daycare now. And so I'm trying to do this work at home and my husband is also at home. We're trying to trade off. Yesterday, I was talking to a family of 5 kids, and they've got their kids at home now, and they're trying to do their education at home. So it's an important challenge, what we're trying to accomplish today.
Yeah, it's crazy. This is you've got more people in just doing family life than has ever happened before in our lifetime. I mean, this is an amazing season. I know here in Southeast Baltimore, talking with the local school district, and just right now it's like, is school going to come back into session?
Yeah.
Probably not. Moving kids online, doing home education, and I mean, it reminds me of like the idea of some great feat that a past generation tried to take on. Um, it's this is some crazy stuff.
See, what's
In a minute, we're gonna hold on just a second before you jump in. In a minute, we're going to talk about cooperation. So,
Sure.
if you're watching this, share this on your Facebook feed. We will answer some questions near the end. Do you have time for questions?
Sure.
Okay, so we'll take some questions, and so you can write those in the comments. I think wherever you're watching this, we'll be able to see those comments aggregated together, whether you're on the National Center for Biblical Parenting Facebook page, you're on the Haven City Church Facebook page, my personal page, wherever you're at. Yeah, share the comments, share the feed. What were you going to say?
Well, just one of the interesting dynamics here is the teachers are now teaching, but they're not having to deal with the discipline in class. So teachers are having a great time just presenting information like they like to do in teaching, where they used to have to do with discipline problems. That's all home now. And so parents are saying, you got to watch the video, you got to email your teacher and stay on track. So it's really important that we have some working relationship between parent and child.
Yeah. It's here, I think. So we're on spring break. We've got kids. They kind of basically told kids, we're moving you now into a spring break, which what it does is it buys the school system a little bit more time to ramp up their online education process. And so, end of March, early April, they'll roll out these new systems. But it's really hard for, I know, the teachers locally here, because they feel like their concern is like, how do we get a kid to come to class? We already have in Baltimore City, we have a massive problem with kids not being at school. And if you miss 18 days of school, you're considered, you're considered absent from the year. So, yeah, it's a difficult challenge. Again, hey, if you're just tuning in, thanks for tuning in. We're going to talk a little bit about getting kids to cooperate. And this is our second video that we've done, live stream talking about parenting. We want to keep doing that. I know for the congregation that I pastor here in Baltimore and the community that I'm in, parenting is a huge issue. And now that we're all in isolation, stuck together as families, this is now's the time to learn and to up our parenting skills, right? So you ready to jump into this?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Good. So in the last video, we were really kind of going through a very common scenario that takes place in the home, and it's how kids are motivated. And we talked a little bit about being motivated from at a heart level versus reward and punishment. And a lot of parents are familiar with reward and punishment, kind of like Pavlov's dog. We're motivating behavior through, hey, if you do this, I'll give you a treat. or if you don't listen to my words, I'm going to rage on you and get really upset. So that's kind of, would you call that behavior modification?
I would. I think it's very common. It basically goes like this. You tell a child, I'll give you what you want if you do what I say. And what that does is it feeds children selfishness. So eventually they're going to ask the wrong questions about life. What's in it for me? Are you going to pay me for that? What's the minimum I need to do to get my reward? And it really backfires with a victim mentality or entitlement in children. We've got to move away from that to the heart. And you'll know you're working on the heart of a child if you think about tendencies. That's the best way to think about this. Does your child have a tendency to argue with you? It's a problem. If the tendency is to say no when you give an instruction, that's a problem. If a child has the wait a minute disease, and so every time you give an instruction, it's wait a minute, that's a problem because it demonstrates a lack of cooperation in the child. So think tendencies, and when you do, you'll be moving into the heart of a child, and then we have to use some other tools to bring about a major change in the way children develop their tendencies and how they respond to life.
Now that's really good. And last time when we were talking, we were getting into the idea of motivating a kid's heart so that they tend towards the behavior we're hoping for them. And one of the things I really loved, and people can go back and watch that video. I think it's posted on your social media channels and on my church's social media channels. We talked about how if we're addressing kids at a heart level and we're training kids, being strategic at a heart level, we're setting them up for success as adults. Whereas behavior modification doesn't really give life skills to our kids.
That's exactly right. In fact, one of the ways that we move children from where they are to where they need to be is to identify where we want them to go. In this case, what we're going to talk about today is cooperation. We want them to develop cooperation, and it's not just to get their schooling done. We want them to develop cooperation because it's going to help them to be a better person. It's going to help them to do better in their future with their future spouse. It's going to help them work on a team or to be involved in a job or to just reduce tension in general in life if children can learn to cooperate. So cooperation is a life skill, it's a heart quality, and I want to give you some ideas about moving in that direction today, very practical ideas of how to get there.
Okay, so let's talk about your child giving them a vision and how to talk with a child about this goal out ahead. What do you mean by that?
All right, so you've identified a problem with the child. This child is resentful or bitter or angry or defiant or bad attitude, whatever it is, and you're moving toward cooperation. 3 heart tools we want to use at the same time. The first one I tell parents is do relationship well. That's heart connecting with a child. So look for ways to connect with the child's heart because relationship softens the heart. The second one, as you said, is vision. We're going to talk about why we're moving. Son, you have a lot of good qualities, but one of the things I see that sometimes we have tension when I give you a task to do. I want to help you develop cooperation because that's going to build for you a life skill you're going to use for the rest of your life. Visioning is about why and about perspective and about going forward. So we want to present it to the child in a positive way. Just because we vision doesn't mean that they're going to want to buy into it, but it does set the stage very positively many times as we're working toward a goal. Son, we're going to help you move towards something. So now we're not just using correction to get away from something. We're using training to get where we want to go, and we're becoming the coach for the child to move them in that direction.
So in the last video that we did, we talked about building the relationship and that as our relationship grows with the child and we're feeding that good, healthy, positive relationship, that's one of the things that's motivating their heart. Now what you're saying, the second tool is giving them a vision of where they want, where we want them to be.
Yes, we're talking about the goal, and it just turns our parenting positive. It's not just about stop it. If you don't stop it, I'm going to do this to you. Now we're working on cooperation, and we're working toward an agenda here, and we're building something in the child's heart using training. So the first heart skill that we're using is, or parenting tool, is relationship. The second parenting tool we're using is visioning, having a positive conversation with a child. And the third tool then is the firmness. And that's where the structure comes in. That's where we're going to work on some actual activities and practice sessions to train this child to develop something in their heart, not just get their schoolwork done, but actually get something developed inside of them that they'll use for the rest of their lives.
I think most of us just use the firmness.
Well, yeah, parents think firmness, consequences. I'm not. Consequences are great. We'll talk about that next time. We're going to talk about when children are off track, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about training. What does it look like when we're moving our child in a direction? And firmness isn't just about consequences. It's about structure that we're creating. The child has to work within that structure, and it starts to reform the way they respond to life situations. That's cooperation. We're going to build it.
Awesome. So, let's why don't you give just a example here with the instruction routine as a therapy strategy. We talked about some of these things before we went live, and I don't know what you mean by that. What is an instruction routine as a therapy strategy?
Right. Not every child's going to need what I'm about to say. So what I'm suggesting is a child who doesn't have cooperation inside of their heart really needs some therapy. And I believe that parents are the best therapists for their children if they have a good plan. And so this therapy is really a structure or practice sessions. Practice sessions with a child in order to build new patterns. So with the child who has a problem with cooperation, we're going to actually do some practice sessions. I would suggest you're going to practice what I'm about to say 20 times a day for dad, 20 times a day for mom, because we're changing the tendencies. And I would suggest we're going to do this. We're going to say to a child who's 5, a young child, a preschooler, we're going to say, when I call your name, you need to come. We're going to do the same thing with a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old. When I call your name, you need to come. With a 15-year-old, we might be saying, look, I don't want to have this tension that we're having. I don't want to be yelling across the house. In order to have a stronger relationship, there's sometimes I'm going to call you, sometimes I'm going to go to you, but let's have face-to-face conversations so that we're available together. But let's go back down here to a child who's 7, 8 years old, and we're going to just call the child's name, because what we want the child to do is learn to say yes inside of their heart instead of no. So you give a child 20 opportunities a day to say yes. What you call their name, Bill, and Bill needs to be able to respond, yes, Dad. Not wait a minute or no, but yes, Dad. And when they come, then we're going to give them an instruction, and they need to do 2 things. So what we're doing is we're creating a cycle here, a cycle of responsibility. This is the right way to follow an instruction for you, son, because we're building cooperation. I'm going to call your name. You come. I'm going to give you a task to do, maybe even just a real simple task. This isn't like go clean your bedroom. This is like pick the pencil up off the floor now and put it on the counter. Really simple, because it's about the process here, not about the task. And we're saying you need to, so building this internal motivation, you need to pick up the pencil, put it on the counter now. The child says, okay, Dad, does it, and reports back, I'm done. So the child's done 3 things. Come when called, has said okay or responded back, and is reporting back when they're done. Now, this cycle that we take them through starts to soften something inside of them. It's a structure that we're creating. And we're talking to the child, again, visioning and saying, remember, what we're doing here is we're building something significant in your heart. We're building cooperation, and that cooperation means that your initial answer is yes. Now, wait a minute. Parents are going to say, oh, but I want my child to be involved in critical thinking. I want him to question authority. I want him to be able to set boundaries. Those are great goals and good things for children, but they're advanced skills. There's some children who can't do anything but challenge authority. And what we're trying to do with this child who doesn't have cooperation is practice something and work it out in their heart over a period of time. You know, if you work on this for several days, 20 times a day for dad, 20 times a day for mom, in addition to your normal instruction activities, you're going to start seeing some change take place. You're not the policeman, you're the coach saying, come on, son, let's work on this. This is something you need to develop in your heart. And we're actually changing the tendencies a child has. We're changing their operating principles. We're changing the heart. That's the goal here.
So you're with the whole idea of visioning and giving them a vision of what you want them to become. You're engaged in this therapy, these exercises, over and over and over again throughout the day, 20 times a day, but you are communicating as they are doing it what you are strategically trying to accomplish in their life. Is that how the visioning factors into this?
Yes, it is. So the visioning is all about, here's why we're working on this. I'm on your side. I'm a coach with you. I'm helping you do this because this is going to develop something stronger for you than you have now. It's powerful. One boy I worked with, or I work with the parents in coaching sessions. And so the parents said, our son's a tyrant. He's a terrorist in our home, our 11-year-old. And so I said, okay, well, let's work on these three things: relationship, visioning, and firmness, using the instruction routine. How you present it's important. In week 1, they presented this to their son. They said, son, you're going to be a leader someday. I can tell just by the way you're telling everybody what to do, and you have your own agenda. But I'm going to help you to be a better leader. I'm going to come alongside of you and help you to learn what it means. So we're going to practice the instruction routine so you can be a better leader. This boy changed in 2 weeks. He became so much more cooperative because he realized his parent was doing something besides just getting tasks done. But now we're working on something inside the heart. We're developing character and we're moving forward. That is a powerful transition. It doesn't just come with visioning. That's a good tool. But notice it also is accompanied by the relationship and also the firmness. We are moving forward, whether you like it or not. We're going forward in this direction. We're going to develop some new tendencies here.
Awesome. So the reason why we're going so granular and even giving this exercise for parents to do is because we're now living in this real reality of so many people doing home education. People are all of a sudden now the teacher or the primary educator in the home. Maybe they have some curriculum that the school gave to their kids, but they're the ones giving instructions, and they're feeling like the kids in my home, they don't want to cooperate. They don't want to do this. And so what you're saying is, look, here's how we can get the change. And I think there's a lot of parents out there that can relate to exactly what you're saying, where they feel like their child is a tyrant. There's no way that this change is going to happen. And unfortunately, what takes place is that parents resort to things that don't foster relationship. They resort to anger, right? They're resorting to just kind of a carrot on the stick. Again, behavior modification. So what you're saying is, hey, let's just work. So you are a therapist. You're working with kids and families all the time in this space. There's probably parents that are out there listening to this saying it's impossible. My kid is not going to change. But now you're telling a story about a kid who was came in, and within 2 weeks you saw significant change by addressing heart issues. Is that what you think parents can expect?
Well, I work with families every week. I take clients myself, and I have 200 coaches that I've trained who work with families over the phone, Skype, and so on. So this is what we do. And we take parents through a process of change. Now, every child's different. We can't expect every child to change in 2 weeks. Sometimes children are pretty resistant, and we have to work this. But what we're doing is we're doing what we talked about in our last session. There are 2 cycles. Remember, there's the cycle about getting things done. And that's what we're going into in depth today. We're trying to get things done here, training a child by focusing on where we're going. But there's this other cycle when the child's off track. We have to approach that differently. We're going to talk about that in our next session. But parents often say, well, what if he doesn't come when called? What if he doesn't give me an answer back or report back? We're going to work on this. And I would suggest the solution isn't correction. Let's do more training. Because it's training that really helps children make some significant adjustments as they're working forward in their lives.
Man, that's great. In a second, you've got here a Bible story that you're going to share. We'll do Bible time. But before that, I just want to give a shout out to a couple of our friends here. Jeff Miller, my friend from when I was a kid. So true. Parents are in a whole new world right now. Also, Lisa, giving a shout out from Southern California. We're praying for you guys, Lisa, out there. And Lawana, so powerful. Thank you for putting this on. Absolutely. So we appreciate the comments. It's great to get the feedback from you all. If you happen to watch this after the fact and you have some questions that you'd like us to address in the next video, you can leave those comments as well. Okay, Bible time. What's the Bible story for us tonight?
Well, I developed the solutions for change in a child's heart by looking at the way God changes us. So let me give you a story from the Old Testament. This story comes from Numbers chapter 9, verses 15 to 23. But remember, God led the people out of Egypt with Moses as the leader, takes them to Mount Sinai where they get the success principles. Then they move on to the promised land where they aren't able to go in. Why? Because they had their own agenda, because they were unwilling to obey. They had anxiety issues. We could analyze these people to death, because why couldn't they obey? They couldn't go into the promised land, and they missed out on that beautiful opportunity. And so God says this, okay, I'm going to have to work with these people. I'm going to have to train them. I'm going to take them back out into the wilderness, and I'm going to teach them about the cloud. And that's what's happening in Numbers chapter 9, verses 15 to 23. He says to them, the cloud is going to come down over the tabernacle, and when it does, you're to camp. And when it goes up, you're to go. And sometimes the cloud is going to go up at night, and you're to go. Sometimes it's going to go up in the morning, and you're to go. Sometimes it will go up after one day, and you're to go. And sometimes after 3 days, and you're to go. And sometimes after a week or a month or a year, and you're to go. The idea is watch the cloud, and the passage says, because that is how God is commanding you. So they're learning how to follow instructions. I have to imagine them saying, but God, my clothes aren't dry on the line. No, when the cloud goes, you go. You don't ask any questions. Oh, but I'm not finished cooking dinner. You go. Okay, you learn to watch the cloud, because watching the cloud is your opportunity to follow instructions. So God uses the instruction routine in order to lead them for 38 years, and he leads them to the promised land. And now could they go in? Yes, they could go into the promised land because they'd learned how to trust, to give up their agenda, to obey God, and even do something we would think is rather silly. They march around a city with musical instruments, and the walls fall down. God has a plan, and notice he used 3 tools to do that. 1, he built relationship with them. I'm going to take care of you in the wilderness here. I'm going to give you food every day, lead you to water. Your shoes aren't going to wear out. I'm going to guide you. I'm going to protect you from your enemies. That's all the relationship building he's doing. Then he gives them this instruction routine. We're going to practice this so you can learn how to give up your agenda and follow the Lord's command, not be asking questions, learn how to trust and move forward. And he uses visioning. I'm going to take you to a land that's flowing with milk and honey. It's God's way of just moving them in their hearts to this new place, because he knows that in order to live in the promised land, they've got to have these life skills. We're doing the same thing with our children. We're developing the life skills in them so that they can live not only now with education at home. It's much bigger than that. This is life skills you're going to take with you for the rest of your life into the promised land that God has waiting for you. So that's the story of Numbers chapter 9, verses 15 to 23.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great note to end on. Okay, we're going to keep doing these training videos. Lots of you out there are you have been forced into an opportunity to practice your parenting skills, and we want to walk with you on this journey. Again, my name is Josh Taransky, and I've been joined by Dr. Scott Taransky, who is my father. He is from the National Center for Biblical Parenting. He's also a pastor, and I pastor a church here in Fells Point, Baltimore, southeast Baltimore. And we will be back next time with some more parenting tips. Any final words before we sign off?
No, it's a hard work that we do, but keep in mind that working with the heart of a child is so rewarding, because you're really working for the future. It's not just about now. And you might have to take a break from schooling for a little bit to work on cooperation, but you want to do the work. It's well worth it. Reduce the tension in your home and strengthen your child's heart.
Amen. Amen. All right. Thanks. We will see you soon.